This is the Week 12 wrap-up at the 16th season of Blood, Sweat, and Beers. Do you find that it's better or that you prefer that your team have the ability to score a lot of points on any given week? Or that you have a very consistent, if not maybe a little bit lower output every single week? Sometimes I actually find myself, when my teams are scoring in bunches, my players on my team are scoring in bunches, after getting excited and thinking, oh, this is fantastic, this is going to bump up my standing and the points scored, which we know can factor into some of the tie breaks at the end of the season for playoff seeding or even making the playoffs. I then find myself thinking, hold on, save some of these points for next week. Obviously, that's not how it works, but have you ever had a similar thought? It's nice to score and be able to score a lot of points, but let me give you a few statistics before we look back at Week 12 that may change your initial reaction or your initial preference to the scoring question there. There have been 3 teams that have led the weekly scoring, number one in score for a week, and have broken 170. 170, I just made this arbitrary line. 3 teams have had the number one score, the best score on a given week, and have broken 170 twice. Your Commish, Puzzles, and Poncho. None of them have a winning record. Poncho has the high score on the season at 190. Not a winning record. On the flip side, there are 2 teams that have never had the best score for any week and have never broken 170. You may guess one of the teams that are at the bottom of the standings, and that'd be correct. Pet Detectives, never done either of those things. The other team that has never broken 170 and never had the best score on a given week, Mr. Snuffy, our number 1 overall points leader. So is it better to be able to score a lot on any given week, or is it better to score a little bit less, but to do it every week? I think this year we know the answer to that. Well, let's look back at the individual scores that we had this past week. Big score, number 1. This actually put Commish over 170 and best score of this particular week to add to that statistic just previous. But 179, 99, 80-point win, fantastic, but still goes down as just a single win. But that was kind of fun to watch. First time for Gloop that he's under 100 for the year. That might be amazing as our last place team, only 2 wins on the year, but this is only the first time he's been under 100. So, at least he's doing that right. But it was pretty fantastic that Commish's team here had 4 different scores of 70 or more yards. Saquon did it twice, and then the double up between Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. So obviously that's going to power some serious points, and with 50 plus from Saquon, it's hard to beat, hard to top that, especially when you got some other guys scoring some points. So that does not help Gloop with his leaguing points against. He is still squarely in first place, or I guess you could say last place, most points against. And unfortunately, he has now dropped out of playoff contention. He has been eliminated, our first team to be eliminated from playoff contention. As we look at the potential scores in the pop, man, Commish just has a hard time picking the right players. It didn't affect this week at 179 best of the week. However, that potential of 226 would have been the second best score in league history. But again, a single win is a single win. Gloop didn't do too bad. Could have broken 100, but obviously would not have had a chance to win that one. Moving on to our next score, Poncho versus Skibbity, Aaron. Unfortunately for John, for being second in points scored, just having a hard time picking up those wins. That's just how it is. What I really liked about this one is, had he started Jerry Jeudy for Cleveland, he would have won the game. Just let that sink in. John's having a love-hate relationship with all of these Cleveland and Pittsburgh players on his roster, on his bench. Ups and downs for him, all at the hands of division rivals. And there's something maybe bittersweet about that for the rest of us. But the Bo Nix experiment continues. In fact, Aaron is all in on Bo Nix, not even rostering another quarterback. And it's been working so far for him. So we'll see if that continues on. He is just about, I believe, he would be one win away from locking in his playoff spot. And actually, there are some interesting implications. We'll take a look at that a little bit later. But Skibbity, Aaron locks in, or gets another win here for the season. And as we look at the potentials there, John could have won. Again, Jerry Jeudy drops that guy in. Aaron did just about all he could have. Could have squeezed a few more points out, but what he did was good enough for the win. Our next game, we got the brothers, Big Bro, Little Bro. Big Bro wins, 10 points, evens them out at 5 and 7, fighting for their playoff lives. And Puzzles had an opportunity to get 2 games up on that, but unfortunately, that was not to be. As we look at the potential scores there, Puzzles falling under 80%, and obviously a few adjustments there could have won him the game. I mean, the Texans defense, that would have been fantastic, but even just swapping out quarterbacks, starting Jordan Love would have given him the game. He'll have to really consider those homer picks going in to the final 2 weeks of the season. But our next game, Pet Detectives, Read Option. Read Option said, I can score some points, even though he's still in the bottom half of the league in scoring and just 4 points away from being third last. Scores them when he needs to. And that's keeping him atop of the West Division, 2 games ahead with 2 games to play, and finally locks in his playoff berth. Now he's just hoping to get that first round bye. Hopefully, for him, he's able to do that. Look at the potentials there. As we see, Joe didn't do too badly. Upper 80s, but even a perfect roster would not have been enough to get him the win this week. And Reed left quite a few points on the bench there. AB could have hit 180, could have broken 180. But again, a win's a win, and 158 was plenty. So our final game, what a disappointment. You know, we went from boogers being the best. This week I'm calling it boogers are just gross. Low score of the season, 83 points. I don't know what happened. Another 80-point win, 80-point loss, depending on which side of that you're on. That's just gross. I don't even know what to say. Had the opportunity to take the number 1 spot in the East and hopefully get that first round bye. Now he drops 2 games, really based on the tie break. They've split their games based on the tie break. Mr. Snuffy's got a lot more points on the season, which is what that would come down to. So really ends up being 2 games back with 2 games to play. So we'll have to see what happens there. Almost breaks 170, Mr. Snuffy, but still hasn't done that on the season, although still keeps himself in first place for total points. That's just how it's rolling for Mr. Snuffy this season. If we look at the potentials, nails that 100%. 169.08, that was the best he could have done, and that's exactly what he did. So we see Boogers left a lot of points on the bench. Wouldn't have mattered. Could have broken 100, could have kept himself from being the low scorer on the season. but it wouldn't have mattered win-loss. And that's where we are. Both are going to the playoffs, but whether they make that get that first round bye or not, it's not looking good for Boogers. As we look at the league standings, as I said, 3 teams locked in, 1 team disqualified, and we've got 2 teams with a pretty solid shot. Skibbity, 1 more win, locks his in. Your commish is pretty close, just needs 1 more win to lock in his spot. And then we've got 3 at the bottom of the East, mid to the bottom, rounding out the East, all fighting for that number 6 spot. Could potentially get to number 5 depending on how the next 2 weeks go. But this is what we're looking at the moment. And as we look at the stats, again, we got a little bit of a shakeup there. Read option ends up taking the number 1 spot just based on the tiebreak because he beat Mr. Snuffy earlier in the year. And so he gets the current number 1 spot. But number 1 and number 2 are basically the same. Both give you the bye week, and that's all you're really looking for. Boogers is still sitting at number 3, but doesn't really matter once you get to the playoffs if you're playing that first week or not. You got to make sure you win. We look at total points. John slides back up into number 2 spot for points scored. Mr. Snuffy maintains his spot there, quite a few points ahead. And Gloop not only has the fewest points scored, but again, the most points against. So that's gonna hurt him going forward. It's gonna sting just a little bit. What could have been, can't have the most points against you and expect to be very successful. So as we look at the pops for the week, pretty much locked in at the same order of things. Mr. Snuffy, just a little bit ahead of Aaron. We'll see if maybe he can slide in and unseat Mr. Snuffy at the top of all of the lists at the moment, or top 1 or 2 of all the lists. Is this just destined for Keith to roll and get himself an unfathomable 4th Pilsner? We'll have to see. But the game to watch this week, Reed versus Skibbity, AB versus AA. Ron, this is an interesting one because if AA Ron wins out, including this game against Reed Option, and Reed Option then loses out, which means losing next week too, because they split their games, AA Ron is currently ahead in points 4, which means there is a chance Aaron could take the number 1 seed in the East. Will he do it? Does he have enough firepower? Will he try to squeeze out every last point and really work his roster? We'll have to see. Enjoy week 13.